Revenge with Karen. I knew something was rotten when I saw the look on Ben's face. You don't need a polygraph when a man who normally avoids eye contact suddenly walks past your cubicle, sees a sealed envelope on your desk, and physically winces. Then he doubles back, leans in like we're exchanging Cold War intel, and whispers, "Don't sign it, just look who CC'd." It's Compliance Day at Telvale Systems, a corporate holiday nobody celebrates but everyone fears. Picture a whole department holding their breath while clicking yes. I have read and understood, knowing full well half of us skimmed that policy doc while eating reheated pad thai. It's usually boring, ceremonial beige, until it isn't. I peeled open the flap of my envelope expecting the standard fare, check boxes, some vague GDPR update, maybe a blurb about workplace respect featuring a cartoon badger. Instead, 4 pages, single-spaced, full of dense clauses that read like they'd been pulled straight from a liability playbook. And at the bottom, tucked under my name, were 2 CCs, one from HR, standard, and then Marcy Gillen. Now, I've worked here 12 years. I've outlasted 5 rounds of layoffs, 3 CEOs, and 2 entire rebrands. I've never met Marcy Gillen, never had a reason to. She's legal's high-end mighty VP, kind they roll out during SEC reviews or settlements they don't want discussed in Slack threads. Why was her name on my Compliance Day packet? If you're listening and thinking, maybe it's just a formality, let me tell you, nothing with legal is just a formality. It's like seeing your doctor's name at the bottom of a Pizza Hut receipt. You just know something's off. By the way, real quick before I go on, if you like these kinds of stories, do us a solid. Hit that little thumbs up, maybe tap subscribe. 95% of folks listening don't, but it helps the team keep digging up these office landmines, and frankly, it keeps me from screaming into a throw pillow after reliving this crap. All right, back to hell. I stared at the pages. The language wasn't just dense, it was off. One paragraph casually referenced affirmed acknowledgement of historical review processes, which is legalese for you accept whatever's already happened. Historical review? My stomach twisted. I was in those reviews, or at least I used to be. A couple months ago, I'd flagged discrepancies in vendor contract reconciliations. Nothing huge, just invoices that didn't match signatures, service dates that overlapped like a bad time travel movie. I brought it up during one of our Tuesday audits. Ben brushed it off, that procurement was cleaning house, and that the old director had already left. Case closed. But now, seeing this clause, that language, it was like someone had taken my past 6 months of work, duct-taped it to a crime scene, and left my fingerprints on the knife. I walked to the break room, trying to act normal, but my hands were sweating like I'd just stolen something. People were laughing, sipping burnt coffee, treating today like any other Tuesday. Just sign and scan, someone told the intern, who was already halfway through his 4th Red Bull. HR had even brought in donuts. Glazed Betrayal, anyone. Back at my desk, the envelope sat like a bomb with a smiley face sticker. I flipped back to page 2 and noticed something else. My copy was stamped version 4B. That's not standard. Everyone else's was version 3. I needed to be sure. So I did what every underpaid, overloyal employee does when panic sets in. I started snooping. Casually, I asked Cheryl over in Risk if I could peek at her packet just to compare formatting. Hers was 3 pages. Mine was 4. No extra clauses, no weird CCs, no Marcy Gillen. That confirmed it. My document wasn't standard. It was a trap dressed in company letterhead, and someone wanted me to walk straight into it. Ben doesn't talk to people. He emails them from 30 feet away. Man once coordinated an entire floor move without speaking above a whisper. So when he leaned in that morning, eyes darting like a raccoon near a trash can, and murmured, "Don't sign it, just look who CC'd," it hit harder than if he'd shouted it across the break room with a bullhorn. And then he just walked off. No follow-up, no clarification. Just left me sitting there holding the corporate equivalent of a ticking time bomb wrapped in a manila hug. I flipped back to the CCs. First, Marcy Gillen. That alone gave me hives. But now, looking closer, I saw something even worse. Edward Langley, forensic consultant. Brought in 3 months ago during what they'd called a routine process audit, which is HR speak for someone somewhere has been cooking the books, and now we're paying a stranger with a tie and a laptop to find out who. Edward was one of those clean-cut, no-joke types. Looked like the kind of guy who could recite IRS subchapters from memory and whose laptop had more encryption than Fort Knox. I'd only seen him once, during a closed-door meeting with legal where he never spoke, just took notes like he was writing your obituary in real time. There was no universe in which a forensic consultant belonged on a compliance acknowledgement CC. That's like inviting a bomb squad to a birthday party. Something was off. No, something was very wrong. I stared at that signature line like it was a cliff's edge. One click, one scribble, and I could be plunging headfirst into something I didn't even understand yet. My first instinct was to confront Ben, corner him in a hallway, and demand answers. But something in his tone, that half-guilty, half-panicked whisper, told me he'd already said more than he was supposed to. He'd risked something just by warning me. If I pressed him, I might spook him. Or worse, might shut down completely. So I did what I do best. I took a deep breath, straightened the paper stack like it was just another Tuesday, and started digging. Quietly. First step, metadata. That weird clause, affirmed acknowledgement of historical review processes, was it in the document or added after? I opened the file properties and checked the creation date. Odd, created 5 days ago. Modified the morning before compliance day. That made no sense. The company always finalized these forms a month in advance, boilerplate crap that legal reused with a different logo every year. Why would mine be edited less than 24 hours before rollout? I printed it, then opened a shared drive copy from the HR compliance folder. That one, version 3, was created 3 weeks ago. No Edward, no Marcy, no affirmed acknowledgement clause. 3 pages flat. So, mine was different. Deliberately different. My second step was to recheck the vendor reconciliation files I'd flagged 6 weeks earlier. I wasn't supposed to still have access, but thanks to a clerical oversight, or maybe just my tendency to never delete bookmarked links, I still had read-only visibility to the archive folders. I pulled them up. Sure enough, the pattern was clearer now than it had been back then. 3 vendors, all reclassified, all tied to Q4 expenditures, all altered after the procurement director retired for personal reasons, and someone from finance quietly inherited their role without a press release, a party, or even a stale cookie tray. This wasn't negligence. It was cleanup, retroactive, plausible deniability style cleanup, and they wanted someone to sign off on it to bless it. And that someone was supposed to be me. I suddenly realized I hadn't blinked in over a minute. My eyes were burning. My mouth was dry, and my heart was thudding in that slow, heavy way it does when your body knows before your brain does. You've been targeted. Around me, the office hummed with normalcy. Mouse clicks, low murmurs, the printer wheezing out another sheet of lies. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed a joke. I sat frozen in the eye of it, a small storm building behind my ribcage. Okay, I couldn't sign it. That much was clear. But if I didn't, if they were already moving pieces around behind the scenes, they'd notice. They'd wonder. They'd act, so I made a decision. I wouldn't sign it, not now, not today, and I wouldn't confront anyone. I'd observe, document, compare, and most importantly, I'd make damn sure that if this trap closed, it wouldn't be around my neck. The third cup of coffee didn't help. Neither did the fourth. I stared at my monitor while the flavorless office brew churned in my gut like motor oil. My inbox was pretending everything was normal. Subject lines like Q1 retrospective deck final and catered lunch Friday. Tried to pull my attention back into the corporate illusion, but I was already neck-deep in the undercurrent. I pulled up the old reconciliation folder I'd archived out of spite. Not for official purposes, just the kind of digital graveyard you keep when something smells off but no one else cares. The files were from late last quarter. At the time, I'd flagged what looked like sloppy reclassifications. Vendor codes rerouted mid-invoice, line items scrubbed and reassigned. I'd sent 2 polite nudges to the procurement director, Henry Elridge. No reply. Then, poof, Henry was gone. Personal reasons, they said. One all-hands mention, generic Slack post from HR with a waving hand emoji, and that was it. No exit interview, no thank you email. Just silence. Now here's the part that punched me right in the stomach. The vendor in question, Atrix Solutions, was now showing up in our general ledger under 3 different names, all funneled through shell LLCs that hadn't existed 6 months prior. And all of them linked back to the same internal approval chain that used my compliance tag as the original routing authorizer, which would have made sense if I'd ever signed off on those changes. I hadn't. Back then, I'd been looped in to do a standard second review, but mid-thread, suddenly I was ghosted. Emails kept going, but not to me. The final reconciliations, the post-audit sign-offs, they'd quietly replaced me with a new name, C. Malinowski, someone from finance I'd never even met. I'd sent a follow-up to Henry, asking why I'd been removed. Never got a response. I assumed the usual politics, didn't chase it. But today, that name, C. Malinowski, showed up in the very clause buried in my custom compliance doc. The one referencing joint review actions conducted in Q4 under internal approvals. It was phrased like a nod, but I could see the shape of the trap. Acknowledgement of participation in prior internal reconciliations with oversight responsibilities, including but not limited to Q4 vendor approval adjustments, per chain of custody. I read it 3 times. That's a lawyer's way of saying, you touched it, you're liable for it. I didn't just feel boxed in, I felt chloroformed. Opened the original email thread and scrolled to the point where I disappeared from the CC line. That same day, another thread started, the one that finalized the vendor shift. The timestamp, 4:13 p.m. Same day Henry logged his last Teams message before retiring. I checked my calendar. That was also the day we had a department-wide meeting offsite where phones were silenced and we were told to unplug. My out-of-office auto-reply had gone up. Off the grid, they'd waited, watched, and moved. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling tiles. Somewhere in this building, someone had built a paper trail, and that trail pointed to me, just enough to raise questions, not enough to provoke a full audit. But the inclusion of Marcy Gillen and Edward Langley on my doc meant this wasn't just a post-it note from HR. This was the first domino. And if I signed, I wasn't just acknowledging awareness, I was surrendering to it. Hands moved without me thinking. I copied the email threads, metadata included, took screen grabs, zipped them, uploaded a backup to my personal encrypted drive, and another copy to a flash stick I kept inside my badge lanyard. I even printed a hard copy. The printer chugged out paper with the urgency of a dying fax machine, but I didn't care. Every page that fell into the output tray was one less excuse they could use when they tried to throw me under the bus. I opened the file properties again on my compliance doc, version 4B, and compared it line by line with Cheryl's standard version 3. Hers had a clean affirmation. By signing, I acknowledge receipt and review. Mine, by signing, I affirm active engagement in oversight and policy execution relating to prior reconciliation activity and confirm procedural understanding and acceptance. That wasn't a receipt. That was a signature of confession. Someone had gone to surgical lengths to make sure I didn't notice. The worst part? If Ben hadn't whispered, I would have signed it. Just like every year, just like they counted on. I stared out the window, watching the wind bend the corporate flags outside. I was being set up. And the next move had to be mine. Quiet, precise, unmistakable. Because whoever crafted that clause wasn't just burying a mistake. They were digging my grave with a company pen. Lunch at Telvale Systems was always a charade, plastic smiles over microwaved leftovers, and Diet Cokes sweating condensation onto desks that hadn't been wiped in months. But today, it felt like a crime scene wrapped in breakroom small talk. I made my rounds, casually. Clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other, playing the role of a mid-level compliance drone just checking formats to make sure HR hadn't botched the rollout. That was the excuse, anyway. Reality, I was hunting. First stop, Cheryl in Risk. She's been here 10 years, knows where all the bodies are buried, and more importantly, likes to talk. I asked if she had her compliance day packet. Yeah, already signed it, she said, half chewing a piece of dry sandwich. Why? Just making sure formatting was consistent. Can I take a peek? She handed it over like it was a grocery list. I flipped to page 2, 3 pages total. Standard language. No clause about Q4 reconciliations. No active oversight. No Edward Langley. No Marcy Gillen. Next up, Jared from accounting. Same routine. Same outcome. 3 pages. No extra CCs. Just the plain old compliance puff piece everyone gets each year, the kind you could sign in your sleep and forget 5 minutes later. By the time I got to the 4th document, I didn't need to see more. Mine was the only one wearing a noose dressed as a necktie. After the breakroom parade, I headed straight for HR. Their cubicle cluster was a pastel wasteland, those inspirational cat posters and fake succulents that somehow made you feel even less human. I found Lisa, Telvale's HR generalist, typing like she was paid by the keystroke. Hey Lisa, I said, keeping my tone sugar sweet. Quick question. My compliance packet looks different than others. Different length. Extra language, is that normal? Smile never faltered. It was the kind of expression you'd expect from someone who just told a child their puppy went to a farm. Oh, probably just a formatting thing. We updated a few templates last minute for some roles. Totally standard. Is it standard to CC legal and a forensic consultant? She blinked. A half-second too long. Well, some teams, especially in compliance, might have role-specific language, for clarity. Nothing to worry about. Great, I said, returning her smile with the same practiced precision. Can I get that confirmation in writing? Oh, well, we don't usually. I mean, you can always submit an inquiry to legal if you want clarification. But again, totally standard. I nodded, backed away slowly, and didn't say another word. I'd been brushed off, politely, surgically. Back at my desk, I didn't sit down, opened a private folder on my work drive, and saved every relevant file. My version of the packet, the metadata screenshots, the comparison PDFs, the email thread where I got dropped mid-reconciliation. I zipped them up and emailed the encrypted archive to my personal Proton mail, using a burner address I'd set up during the layoffs last year, just in case. Then I printed everything. The document, the metadata, the internal thread, access logs showing I never approved the final reconciliations. I didn't print it all at once, just one doc at a time, walking to the printer between each run like I was just grabbing sales reports. 5 trips, 72 pages. I slid them into a plain white folder, no labels, no markings, and tucked it under my arm like it was a sandwich run. Then, instead of returning to my desk, I kept walking. Down the stairs, out the side door, across the lot. I unlocked my car, lifted the floor mat, and stashed the folder inside the hidden compartment beneath the passenger seat, the one I'd built myself after a run-in with identity theft 5 years ago. Paranoia makes a damn good carpenter. As I shut the door, I caught my reflection in the window. Calm, measured, but my jaw was clenched so tight I could hear it click. I didn't go back to my desk, not because I was scared, because I knew exactly what was coming. Weren't going to give me time to fight this in a meeting room with coffee and donuts. They were going to wait until the end of the day, maybe tomorrow morning, when legal would follow up with a clarification meeting. I'd walk in thinking it was procedural, and I'd walk out with a badge that didn't work, unless I got ahead of it. And now I was ahead. I drove back, parked in a different spot, and re-entered the building like nothing had happened. When people asked where I'd been, I said I needed air. Nobody questioned it. But from that moment on, I wasn't just watching my back. I was building a front. That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car in the far corner of the Telvale parking lot with my laptop open, the dome light off, and my badge still clipped to my shirt like I hadn't already become radioactive. The building's lights dimmed behind me, floor by floor, till only security and the janitorial staff were left moving behind the glass. The plan was simple: test the system I helped build. See, about 4 years ago, back when Telvale still pretended to care about transparency, I helped co-write the internal whistleblower protocol. It was part of our pre-IPO window dressing, all shiny ethics training modules and hotline posters no one ever read. But I wrote the policy language. I knew the inboxes. I knew how they were supposed to work. The inbox for anonymous reports wasn't even tied to our main Outlook exchange. It was routed through a third-party filter, auto-flagged by role, then sent to an ethics committee review group that included one external compliance monitor. That was the idea, the fantasy. I'd stopped believing in that fantasy the moment I saw Edward Langley's name on my compliance doc. Still, I needed to know, was the system broken or weaponized? So I crafted a hypothetical report, drafted it in Word first, edited it like a nervous novelist. The tone was cautious, clinical, just enough to raise flags, not enough to reveal myself outright. I pulled language directly from old cases: concern of improper approval chain modifications, suspected retroactive classification of vendor activity, discrepancy between policy acknowledgement templates across personnel. All framed as, if this were occurring, to qualify as a material breach. I didn't attach files, too obvious, just references. Enough breadcrumbs sent for anyone actually investigating to follow. Then, before sending, I did 2 things. I used the outdated submission method, the one routed through the legacy ethics inbox, which should still trigger a blind review flag to legal, HR, and the external monitor. I blind copied my personal Proton mail to see who'd touch it and how fast. I hovered over the send button longer than I should have. My thumb was slick on the trackpad. The car was quiet except for the buzz of a streetlight overhead. Then I clicked send. I watched the sky turn darker, cars leaving one by one. I gave it 10 minutes. At minute 8, a notification pinged. Proton Mail, message read by Ethics at Telvale Systems Com at minute 9. Another ping, forwarded. Marcy Gillen at Telvale Systems Com CC. Edward Langley at Forensic Partners Com No HR. No external reviewer. No ethics committee, just Marcy, just Edward, the wolves. I sat frozen, the glow of my screen burning the panic into my retinas. I read it twice. 3 times, I was being tracked, not protected. They'd gutted the protocol. No blind review, no oversight. Just a direct line to the cleanup crew. Somewhere along the way, Telvale had taken the ethics policy I helped write and retrofitted it into a tripwire. They wanted to see who was watching. And now they knew. My pulse slowed to a hard, deliberate thud. Not terror, clarity. Like finding out the house is already on fire, so you stop looking for the smoke alarm. I shut the laptop, locked it in the trunk, started the engine. On the drive home, I made one more decision. I wasn't going to send another email. I wasn't going to ask another question. The time for hypotheticals was over. Next time I moved, it would be with evidence and a CC list of my own. By morning, the game wasn't just rigged, it was actively being played against me. I swiped into the building like any other day, except now the air tasted different. That sterile Telvale scent, recycled air, lemon cleaner, and denial felt more sour, like something was turning under the surface. First warning came at 8:17 a.m. when I tried logging into the compliance portal. My credentials, valid since 2014, suddenly didn't work. I triple-checked, reset my password, nothing. Just a red banner at the top of the screen, access suspended pending system update. System update, my ass. I called IT, Greg picked up, cheerful as ever. Oh hey, Judith. Yeah, we're rolling out a blanket security patch today. Some accounts are temporarily frozen. Totally routine. I paused. All accounts? Most. Just compliance side. Legal said it's preventative. Should clear in 24 to 48. Sure, preventative, like nailing the exit shut before a house fire. I didn't argue. I thanked Greg and hung up. But that's when the ache behind my eyes started. A dull throb, like my body knew I was about to be erased. The second warning came in the form of voices. Legal analysts 2 cubicles down, unaware I was in the break room reheating my oatmeal. She's the one with the reconciliation ties, right? One said, loud enough for the microwave hum to carry it clearly. Yeah, the other muttered. But retroactive indemnification covers her if she voluntarily affirms. If not, it's messy. The spoon in my hand went still. I let the oatmeal boil over. Voluntarily affirms, as in, signs that compliance doc, one designed to shift liability under a cozy blanket of acknowledgement. Indemnification, as in, they wanted protection. Not for me, for them. They needed a name on a dotted line, and they were one missing signature away from a legal firewall. My legal firewall. By 9:30 a.m., I stopped playing dumb. I went back to my desk and started clearing non-essentials, personal files, photos, anything sentimental. Not because I was leaving, because I wanted everything else to stay. I wanted them to have to stare at my untouched mug, my half-dead succulent, my sticky note that said nothing is ever just policy. At 10:02 a.m., Ben walked by. He didn't stop, didn't even look at me directly. Just dropped a white envelope on the edge of my keyboard as he passed and kept walking like we were strangers in an airport. No name, no company logo, just 4 words, written in sharp black ink across the front. Use this before noon. And below that, smaller, room 413. I didn't move, not right away. Just stared at it while the noise of the office blurred around me. Room 413 was off the main hallway, one of the old archive rooms that hadn't been updated since Telvale's startup days. No windows, no cameras. It was where they used to store paper records before we went digital and pretended all our problems were solved with a server migration. No one ever used room 413 anymore, which made it perfect. I palmed the envelope, slipped it into my bag, and stood. My legs didn't shake. My hands didn't sweat. I felt nothing, no fear, no rage, just a low, buzzing clarity, like the final hour before a storm finally breaks and you've stopped pretending it might miss you. I passed Lisa in HR on the way. She smiled like she always did. Probably still thought I hadn't signed the document because I was reviewing the language. Probably assumed legal would touch base later with a gentle nudge and a promise of cupcakes at Friday's meeting. They didn't know, not yet. But room 413, that was where the temperature would change, because whatever was waiting for me inside that room wasn't a trap. It was a turning point. And if Ben had the spine to set this meeting up, then someone else, at least one person, still remembered what ethics was supposed to mean. I didn't head there right away. I waited, watched, memorized the energy of the floor. Then, without telling anyone, I turned toward the stairwell and walked toward the one room in the building that didn't have a nameplate, just a number. 413. Room 413 smelled like forgotten paper and filtered lies. The kind of air that clings to old files and older decisions, the ones nobody wants to own, but everyone wants buried. There were no windows, no cameras, no motion sensors blinking their red lies in the corner. Just a long plastic table, a flickering fluorescent light overhead, and Ben, sitting with his hands folded, like someone waiting to confess or be confessed to. Didn't say anything right away, didn't even look up. Just slid a single unsealed folder across the table like it was a surrender note or a bribe, depending on how you held it. Inside, my timeline. 12 months of project milestones, risk reports, and reconciliations, annotated in red ink. Handwritten notes, dates circled. Specific emails underlined. One line caught my eye immediately. Vendor reclassification flagged by JS, Nav. 18. No response logged. Next to it in Ben's chicken scratch. Escalation diverted. Authorization rerouted. I flipped the page. Another circle, removed from CC chain deck 2, and beneath it, CFO looped in. Declined escalation. Suggested realignment of review roles. Realignment. That's what they call it when they carve you out of a conversation, wrap your name in red tape, and dangle it like bait. Ben finally spoke, voice low and steady like someone narrating a eulogy. They need a fall person. My fingers tensed around the folder. He nodded. Legal, CFO, HR. They had a vote, informal but real. Had to pin it to someone close enough to the paper trail to look plausible, but not so high it'd cause noise. And you voted? I voted no. He looked up. For the first time in years, his eyes weren't glazed with corporate fog. They were clear. Tired, but clear. Called it strategic containment, he said, practically spitting the words out. Said it wouldn't destroy your career, just tarnish it. Enough to make the inquiry go away. I let the silence settle between us like dust. Why me? I finally asked. Why not Cheryl, Jared? Hell, why not Henry? He's the one who made the original changes. Ben leaned back, exhaled hard, because Henry's already out. Cheryl's clean. Jared's connected. And you? He hesitated and said it plainly. You care too much. That makes you dangerous, but not indispensable. I closed the folder. The weight of it didn't feel like paper. It felt like inevitability. Did the CFO sign off on this? I asked. Ben nodded. He was briefed. Warned, actually. Twice. He didn't want to escalate to external audit, said it was an internal matter. Translation, he didn't want headlines, and the document, I asked. The one they gave me to sign, customized. You're the only one who got version 4B. Marcy approved it. Edward designed the language. I shook my head slowly like that would change anything. They thought I'd sign without reading. They counted on it. I looked around the room. No whiteboards, no speakerphones, just dust and bad decisions. The safest room in the building. Ben slid another paper across the table. A printout of the Whistleblower protocol, the original one. My name was still at the bottom of the authorship section. They gutted it, he said, but the board doesn't know that. Yet, I stared at my own name. It felt surreal, like reading your signature on a forged check. Something stolen, then used against you. Ben stood, took a deep breath. You've got until noon before they start the paper trail. Once the compliance cycle closes, your window's gone. And then what? I asked. They'll say you were uncooperative. You delayed internal processes. That you failed to disclose prior approval activity. All wrapped up in neat little phrases. I nodded, slowly. The ache behind my eyes had returned, but now it had teeth. Why tell me this? I asked. Why risk it? He looked at the door, then back at me. Because I was there when they made the vote. And I saw how fast they said your name. Like it was already printed on the resignation letter. He paused. Because you're the only one who ever told the truth in this place. He turned to leave. Before stepping out, he looked over his shoulder and said, whatever you're going to do, do it fast. And make sure it leaves a paper trail bigger than theirs. Then he was gone. I sat there for another full minute, folder in front of me, heart not racing but steady, like a sniper waiting for wind. I knew what came next. This wasn't a choice anymore. This was a counterattack. I got back to my desk. The original envelope was still sitting there. Untouched, like a loaded gun on a dinner plate. I didn't look at it, didn't move it. Just sat down and placed my own envelope, white, unmarked, perfectly sealed, directly on top of it. Paper over paper, truth over fiction. I knew it wouldn't take long. At 11:42 a.m., they came, two of them, legal, not Marcy, she wouldn't risk walking in herself, but her deputies. Young, polished, both wearing those same Telvale-issued expressions. Helpful concern barely covering corporate threat. "Hi, Judith," the taller one said, stepping just close enough to block my view of the hallway. "We noticed you haven't submitted your acknowledgement yet." I smiled, just barely. "You're right, I haven't. Is there anything we can clarify? The language can be dense." "Oh," I said, picking up the envelope on top, "you mean this language?" Their eyes darted to the envelope. One of them glanced down at the seal like it might be a live grenade. "I'm glad you stopped by," I continued. "Actually, I do have something I'd like you to look at." I stood slowly, walked around the desk, handed them my envelope. They hesitated, confused. "This isn't," no, I said, "it's not the version you sent me." They didn't open it, just looked at each other like they'd forgotten how to blink. Inside was everything. A printed audit trail of the vendor logs I'd flagged, screenshots showing the metadata changes, the altered timestamps, the document version swaps. The original approval request emails with my name cut mid-thread. The policy draft I helped write, annotated, and stapled to the back, the updated whistleblower protocol, restored to its original language. The clause about blind external review, highlighted in yellow. They were still trying to process what was happening when I picked up the original compliance packet, trap they'd laid for me, and held it between two fingers. "You can keep this," I said, tossing it gently on my desk. "But it's not legally usable, not anymore." The shorter one cleared his throat. "Judith, if there's been a misunderstanding, we'd be happy to review." "No misunderstanding," I said, calm. In fact, I've clarified quite a few things." I tapped the corner of my envelope still in his hand. "That's been sent." A pause, one blink, two. "Sent to who?" asked. I leaned in slightly, just enough for them to hear it, but not enough for anyone else. "Chair of the audit committee, outside counsel, and the board secretary." The taller one opened his mouth to speak. Nothing came out. I stepped back, straightened my badge, and folded my hands. "If there's anything else you need," I added, "feel free to check the attachments. Especially the one titled Retroactive Indemnification and Pattern Liability Exposure. Might help with context." The silence that followed was beautiful. Full, heavy. They didn't ask any more questions, just nodded quietly and left, envelope still in hand. Posture suddenly less confident. Shoulders tight, I watched them walk down the hall, left turn at legal, right past HR. I didn't sit back down. Just stood there for a moment, letting the heat in my chest simmer into steel. Because now the board knew. The paper trail was bigger than theirs. I hadn't just refused to sign. I'd flipped the entire script. By 12:17 p.m., legal was gone. Not just left for meeting, gone, vanished. Offices dark, inboxes quiet, auto-replies activated. Like someone had yanked the emergency brake and the whole department tumbled off a cliff. No explanations, no hallway whispers, just silence that smelled like fear. At 12:46, Lisa from HR got a call. Not a Teams ping or a Slack nudge, a real call, landline and all. I saw her face drop the moment she answered. She didn't say a word, just nodded over and over like she was trying to make herself smaller through compliance. By 1:00 p.m., Ben's phone buzzed with a notification. Encrypted Teams message. High clearance tag. He didn't open it in front of anyone. Just locked his screen and walked away, face unreadable. I sat still through all of it. No celebration. No gloating. Just watched the ripple spread. At 2:21, I got the calendar invite. Meeting with Audit Chair Conf RM 9A. No subject line, no attachments. Just a time. I stood, collected my notes, not the originals, just summaries, and walked the long carpeted corridor to conference room 9A. The glass walls had been frosted, the company logo blurred into soft edges. Inside sat Alina March, chair of the audit committee. She stood when I entered, extended her hand. No assistance, no legal, no pretense. "Judith," she said, "thank you for coming." I nodded, took the seat, waited. "We received your materials," she continued, sliding a slim folder across the table. My handwriting on the top page, "and we've begun a formal review. Effective immediately, all compliance documentation tied to Q4 vendor reconciliation has been locked. Forensic review is underway." I said nothing. "Just let her speak." "We'd like your assistance," she went on, "as an internal advisor. Temporary role, higher access. Your review protocols were significantly more robust than what's currently in place." I blinked once. "You're asking me to help fix what your C-suite broke." I'm asking you to help prove what they broke. Quietly, effectively, I looked at the folder, at the chair, at the future I hadn't planned for but saw now with surgical clarity. Fine, I said, but I want autonomy, and no edits to my reports without written approval. No filters. You'll have it, she replied, already standing. We don't want filters anymore, we want survival. By 3:48 p.m., the internal memo went out. It didn't name names, it never does, but it mentioned temporary restructuring of compliance leadership and a proactive internal audit review. At 4:02 p.m., I passed the HR wing. Lisa's desk was empty, her nameplate gone. The director's office, door open. Files gone. A new notice taped inside the glass, under Interim Oversight Compliance Risk Division. No title, no name, just control. I walked past it. Didn't pause, didn't smile. I didn't need to. They tried to frame me with paper. But I wrote the damn protocol. And now I was the oversight. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.